Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
Today you and I are going to be looking at something pretty wild, hypnotic regressions.
Oh, yeah. Those
And
are always fun.
they are.
Yeah.
We've got four, we're going to be talking about Ashtar Sheran today,
Okay.
and we've got four different hypnotic regressions that we're going to be looking
Secret hypnotists.
from different hypnotists with different people.
Different subjects.
So,
So really interesting to see what they have in common and how they're different.
absolutely. And it's, hypnotic regression. It's fascinating because you're really tapping into the subconscious,
Right.
and those memories and impressions,
Yeah.
they can be very subjective.
Right.
So it's always,
That's what makes it so fun.
it is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So each one of these individuals had a totally different first impression of Ashtar Sheran.
Right.
And
Each one had a different perspective. Yeah. And they were so different that you wonder, are they even talking about the same being?
right.
But anyway, so Tamara described Ashtar as a trickster
A trickster
who had made a pact with
with like
frequency energy.
low frequency energies, yeah. And she even went so far as to call him a planted agent.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And then Svetlana's impression was so different.
totally different.
She described him as this astral entity who could shift into 82 different forms.
82, wow.
Yeah, like
That's a lot.
it's a lot, isn't it? And he was blending reptilian, draconian, and even human energies into his different forms.
Wow. So it's almost like he's not an individual, but like this swirling vortex of different energy.
It's a mishmash.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, and then we have Valeria, and she initially saw like the typical internet image of Ashtar, but then that morphed into this humanoid with really long, thin arms and a big head.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. She felt that this typical Ashtar that we see was just a hologram,
A hologram.
projected by this other being.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's like,
Different projection.
it's wild. And then Tatiana,
Right.
she sensed Ashtar as this powerful energy, like almost a parasite that had woven itself into Earth.
Wow.
And she envisioned him operating through a cloned humanoid-like being.
A cloned being. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Powerful.
so interesting how
Four different people.
four different people and they're all seeing something.
Wildly different.
Yeah, different. But then are there any similarities or are they?
Yeah, there are.
Oh, there are. Okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So it's almost like each person's subconscious is filtering this information
Okay.
through their own lens.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
But
That's their perception of it.
yeah, but despite those differences, there are some like striking commonalities in how they described Ashtar's origins and his relationship with humanity.
Okay, so let's get into that.
Yeah.
So what about his origins? What did they say about that?
Well, Camera believed that Ashtar was one of the first humans on Earth, and that he was tempted by power and got corrupted by making deals with other beings.
It's like a fall from grace kind of.
Yeah, like the classic.
Yeah.
Right? And she felt that his physical body was gone, but his essence was still around like his pixels or something,
Yeah.
and could connect with people through technology.
Oh, that's interesting. So almost like a digital,
I know, it's so strange.
yeah, digital being.
And then Svetlana, even though she had a completely different first impression, she also believed that he was originally human.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that he had intentionally minimized his human aspect to embrace these darker, more powerful energies.
So both of them are saying that he was human
Yeah.
at some point,
At some point.
and that he kind of strayed from that
Right.
in a way.
And they both agree that he no longer wants to reincarnate.
He doesn't want to reincarnate.
No.
Oh.
Interesting.
So it's like he separated himself from that cycle of, birth and death
right, you're
that
right.
we all experience.
Fascinating. Okay, so what about the others? Valeria's vision of his origins was completely different.
Okay.
She saw him coming from this blue planet.
A blue planet.
Yeah, inhabited by blue-skinned beings.
Blue-skinned beings.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I know. And she believed that his energy was sustained by humanity's belief in higher powers.
Okay, so that's powerful. Like the idea that our belief
I know.
can actually fuel
Right.
the existence of these entities.
Like an egregore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if enough people believe in him,
it could
it could actually strengthen his presence.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing.
I know. It's kind of scary, too.
Yeah, it makes you think about like the responsibility we have
Right.
with our beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tatiana's was the most unique, I think.
Oh, really? What did she say?
She felt that he came from a completely different dimension
Different dimension.
that she described as being fueled by adrenaline and like still forming.
So like raw, chaotic
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah, constantly evolving.
Wow, that's interesting. So we've got these really different ideas of where he came from.
And yet there are some similarities too.
Yeah, and what about his relationship with humanity?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, well let's, maybe we should take a quick break and then
All right.
we'll come back and dive into that. Okay, so we're back and we were just about to dive into Ashtar's relationship with humanity.
Yeah, it seems like there's this recurring theme of power and control.
Yeah, like each of those regressions sort of hinted that he's this force seeking to influence us.
Yeah. And, remember how Tamara called him a planted Cossack?
Mm-hmm.
She felt like he was whispering commands to governments and subtly influencing individuals.
Oh, wow. So like he's this puppet master pulling the strings.
Right. And then we have Svetlana, and she also picked up on this manipulation thing.
What'd you say?
Well, she saw Ashtar as like this master manipulator preying on people's desire for salvation and spiritual enlightenment.
Oh, so he's like twisting it, you know?
Right. Using our desires against us.
Yeah, it's like a more insidious form of control.
Totally. And then Valeria's experience with the holograms.
Oh, yeah.
She felt like our faith and devotion were being used to strengthen his presence.
It's almost like we're unknowingly feeding into it.
I know, it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, very much so.
And then Tatiana's experience was maybe the most unsettling.
In what way?
Well, she felt that Ashtar was actively trying to suppress humanity, keeping us under control through fear
Oh, wow.
and manipulation.
Yeah, so he's like this oppressive force.
Yeah, like using media, technology, even illness to keep us down.
So it's interesting because they all had these very different ideas of his origins and form,
Yeah,
but this theme of control and manipulation is really consistent.
it is. Yeah, and it really brings us to this idea of the power of belief.
Yeah.
Each session really emphasized how our beliefs can give power to certain energies or entities.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. The more we believe in something, the more real it becomes.
Yeah, exactly. And, this is something that's been studied in psychology and sociology.
Right.
Like the power of belief is a very real phenomenon.
It is. It's kind of scary, though, because it means if enough people believe in something like Ashtar,
Right.
it could give him more power to actually influence our world.
Yeah, regardless of whether he even exists in a concrete form or not.
Right. So it really underscores the need for critical thinking.
It does, especially when it comes to these spiritual matters.
You mentioned earlier that each person had these specific stories
Uh-huh.
come out during their hypnosis.
Yes.
Can you give us some examples that might show this dynamic between Ashtar and humans?
Sure. So Tamara, she described a scene where Ashtar was influencing world leaders.
Really?
Yeah, like whispering in their ears and planting thoughts and ideas.
So he was like manipulating world events.
Yeah, she really felt he was pulling strings behind the scenes.
Wow, that's like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and then Svetlana, she saw Ashtar appearing to people disguised as a benevolent spiritual guide.
Like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Exactly, offering comfort and guidance, but actually leading them toward choices that benefited him.
So tricking people into serving him.
Yeah, very subtle.
And Valeria, what about her?
Well, she saw people drawn to these holographic projections of Ashtar, mesmerized by their beauty and the promises of salvation.
Like moths to a flame?
Yeah, and she felt that Ashtar was feeding off their devotion, drawing energy from their belief.
Wow, so we're actually giving him power.
That's her perception, yes.
And what about Tatiana's session?
Well, Tatiana felt Ashtar's influence through technology.
Technology.
Yeah, like she saw him using the internet and social media to spread fear and division.
Those are like weakness.
Exactly. She felt he thrived on that chaos.
Wow, so we've got these 4 individuals, 4 unique experiences.
Yeah.
But there's this common thread of Ashtar as a manipulative and controlling force.
Right, and this idea that our beliefs can actually empower him.
It's a lot to take in. What are we supposed to make of all of this?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's something we'll explore further in the last part of our deep dive.
I can't wait. Yeah, it really makes you think about the impact of our beliefs.
It does.
We're all kind of co-creating our reality together,
Exactly, and if we're not really aware of what we believe,
Yeah.
we might end up creating a reality that we don't actually want.
So if we're buying into this idea of Ashtar as this manipulative being
Right.
who feeds off fear and division,
Yeah.
are we actually giving him more power to, like, mess with our world?
It's possible, but, we have to remember these are just the subjective experiences of these four individuals.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean that Ashtar is this, real entity out there,
Yeah.
the way that we normally think of reality.
So how do we make sense of all this then?
Yeah, it's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between the power of belief
Uh-huh.
and the fact that reality is subjective.
It's tricky.
It is true.
So do we just trust our gut?
Well, it's about developing that discernment, that inner wisdom that helps us figure out what feels true and authentic and what might be influenced by fear or manipulation or just wishful thinking.
So we need a filter for all the information we're taking in.
Exactly, both from the outside world and from our own subconscious.
So how do we develop that filter?
Well, it takes self-awareness,
Okay.
critical thinking, and a willingness to question everything.
Everything.
Even our own beliefs.
Wow.
Even the things we think we know for sure.
That's a lot of work.
It is. It's an ongoing process,
Right.
but it's so important.
Okay, so it's not about just accepting or rejecting everything we hear.
Right.
It's more about engaging with the information thoughtfully.
Exactly. You got it.
So with these hypnotic regressions, they're super interesting, but
They are.
we shouldn't take them as the absolute truth.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just one perspective on a much bigger mystery.
A starting point.
Yeah, a jumping off point.
Okay, so for our listeners out there, what are some of the key takeaways from all this?
Well, I think the biggest one is how powerful the subconscious mind is.
Yeah.
It's this vast, uncharted territory
Right.
full of information and insights, but it's also easily influenced.
By all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, by our beliefs, fears, desires, all of it.
So we need to be careful.
We do. We need to approach it with curiosity, but also with caution.
Like a treasure chest with booby traps.
Exactly.
And what about this whole Ashtar Sheran thing?
Yeah.
What can we learn from all these different ideas about him?
Well, I think the most important lesson here is that we're always co-creating our reality with our beliefs.
Right.
Whether Ashtar is an actual being or just a symbol of our fears, the fact that he keeps showing up in these regressions suggests that he's tapping into something deep in our collective consciousness.
So if we're scared of being controlled,
Yeah.
are we actually attracting those experiences?
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, it is.
And it brings us back to that question I asked earlier.
About what kind of reality we're creating.
Exactly.
If we want to experience a world full of love and compassion,
Yeah.
we have to start by cultivating those beliefs within ourselves.
Right.
So it's about taking responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not just along for the ride.
We're active participants.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and the more aware we become of what we believe,
Uh-huh.
the more power we have to shape our experiences.
Both individually and collectively.
Exactly.
That's a great message.
It is empowering, isn't it?
It is. We have a choice
We do.
to buy into the fear or to choose a different path.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today.
Yeah, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
And remember, keep questioning, keep exploring, keep diving deep.